The whole feeling was very, very soft, very calm, really at peace. You're definitely at peace. Now, I felt like I was going along a path, but I didn't see a path. You just walked. I didn't even look down, so I don't know where I was walking, but I knew I was going the right way. Hello, and thank you for having me on the show. My name is Susan Jane. I have experienced NDE. I've actually experienced an OBE as well, which I'd like to talk about. So an OBE is an out-of-body experience. So it's a slightly different to an NDE, but there's still the same sort of consequences. I've been doing spiritual work for about over 40 years now. There was actually, what I would like to talk about was there was a situation that happened almost 12 months before the near-death experience. So what had happened was I was 19 years old. I was 2 states away from where I live on a holiday with my younger sister. And I was heading back to the unit. She'd already gone back to the unit. I was heading back to the unit and I had a tap on the shoulder. And I turned around and I was punched in the face and was completely knocked out. Now, I came to being dragged into the back of a car where they were proceeding to pack rape me. Now, when this was happening, I started trying to fight back, and of course there was more punches and more hits and more pain when you do that. So I decided to just allow what was going to happen. And I'm not a religious person, and I don't follow any religion, but I did remember saying to myself, if I can't stop them doing this to me, how can I stop them doing this to anybody else? And in an instant, I left my body and I was outside of the car watching what was going on. Now, when I talk about this situation, this is my OBE, my out-of-body experience. When I talk about this situation, I talk about myself or my body as she or her because it didn't feel like me. I felt like I was outside of the car watching what was going on. And when I looked at her, you could see the blood running down the side of her face where she'd been punched, but you couldn't taste anything. When I looked at her, you could see the energy coming out of the back of her hair, like the back of her head where she'd been pulled into the car. And the energy looked like that. When you see the heat rising off of a road, you see that wavering heat. It was coming out of the back of her. This energy was coming out where she'd had her hair pulled and dragged into the car. You could see these energies, obviously pain, energy coming out of her body in various areas where she'd been hit. But you couldn't taste it. You couldn't smell anything. There was cigarettes and alcohol when I was dragged into the car. But when I left my body, there wasn't. And when you're in this out-of-body experience, you're not attached to the emotion that's going on. So naturally, looking at her face, you could see she was scared, terrified, didn't know what was going to happen. But I never felt that. I just looked on as that third party, just watching it happen. So this all came about, and I remember getting an answer to the question I asked. And the question was, how can I stop them doing this to anyone else? And in an instant, I got the answer, and in an instant, I was back in the body. And once you're in the body, you start to feel everything again. I felt the pain in the back of the head. I could taste the blood in my mouth. Everything was all coming back to me, when you're back in this body. So I started to repeat the words that I heard when I was out of body, in this out-of-body experience. And the words I heard was, "Forgive them, Lord, for they know not what they do." Now, this is obviously a prayer. I don't know where I picked it up from. It was probably primary school, because that was the only time I actually went to any sort of religious sort of ceremony. And so I repeated it. "Forgive them, Lord, for they know not what they do." And I repeated it out loud, not to myself, out loud, louder and louder. And yes, they hit hard. Yes, they tried to stop me from talking. And eventually I stopped when the hands came around the mouth and then around my throat, and I came to on the side of the road. That was the first case of a near-death experience. Now, of an out-of-body experience. Now, I didn't understand what that was. I had no idea what that was. Didn't talk about it, didn't mention it to anyone, because I just didn't know what went on. But almost 12 months to the day, I was at work and I passed out. And this is when I had my near-death experience. Now, I call it a near-death experience because I not only left my body, I actually witnessed what I feel was the afterlife. Now, in the out-of-body experience, I came out of my body and watched what was going on in this life, this time, this reality now. The second time, I did not witness this reality. I remember, I don't even know what happened, but the part I do remember was basically I stood up. Everybody was looking over me, and I stood up, and they still kept on looking over me. And I remember thinking, "Hey, I'm up here. Why are you looking down there?" And obviously, my body was down there, and that's what they were looking at. But my spirit was moving, and it was moving up. Then I remember the actual near-death experience. And in that side of it, I'll get the next question because, yeah, I can talk about the near-death experience, but the lead up to it was, but I actually had this out-of-body experience first. Again, I remember coming up and sort of saying, why are they not looking at me? I'm up here. Why are you looking down? I didn't look down. I just remember looking at them. So I then moved up. And I was in this position, I was in this space, I should say, and it looked like glitter. Everything looked like glitter. The whole ceiling was very, very soft, very calm, really at peace. You're definitely at peace. Now, I felt like I was going along a path, but I didn't see a path. You just walked. I didn't even look down, so I don't know where I was walking, but I knew I was going the right way. And I watched the clouds sort of turn into glitter around me. And then there was these dark areas of glitter. Now, remember, this was like 30 odd years ago. We didn't have mobile phones or anything else. TVs would just go in colour. And I remember looking at these darker patches of glitter and seeing what looked like, I would say now, a mobile phone. It was like a screen, a little TV screen. And when I looked at these little screens, I could see my memories. I could see things that I had done, things that had been in my life. I could see these in these little screens. And I remember thinking, yeah, it's funny, And I just kept on walking. I had no interest at all. Somebody had asked me, was there sound? And it's not that you hear the sound. Even when I had my out-of-body experience, and I sort of say, you say a booming voice told me what to say, but you don't hear a booming voice. If you can imagine going to a movie theatre or going to a show and you watching somebody play a drum and then the sound goes away, but you can still see the drum, and it's like that energy that's coming out of it. That's like this booming voice that I heard. When I'm walking in my near-death experience, the energy around it was so soft, it was so light, and people say like angel music. Well, yeah, because it's so hard to explain it in any other way. It feels so soft and so peaceful, and you feel so at home. Like I was loving it. And the colours are hard to explain too because they're not the same type of colour that we see here. The closest colour I could see there was a green. Now, it wasn't like a green, it was like a green light, if that makes sense, rather than green colour. It was like a green ambient light. It was just, it's hard to explain because the words we have on Earth don't match what we see, and it's hard to explain that side of it. But again, I remember walking along, I was moving along, and a wall came up. Now, it was in the distance, and it was a solid wall, because all you saw was like the shadow of it. So it was just a shadow, and then there was this area that I was heading to. It wasn't an arch, it wasn't a gate, it was just an open area that I was heading to. It was like an entrance, so I knew it was an entrance. And as I've got closer, I could see entities behind it. I could see shadows, but not negative shadows, just little shadows. And it was like people sticking their head around the corner saying, oh, she's not supposed to be here. And they were laughing and giggling. And all I wanted to do was just keep going because it was so beautiful, and you did feel like you were going home. But that's when I got this. This was definitely like a booming voice. It was like that energy, that boom, boom, and straight away it was like, you're not supposed to be here. And I actually came to on at work when I was working in a bank, so I actually came to there. Now I came to there. The doctor had come in. There's the doctor's surgery right beside us, right beside the bank. The doctor had come in and called the doctor in, and I had to have an adrenaline shot to bring me back. So it's not like I was at a hospital or anything else where I can prove that this happened. All I know is this is what's happened to me, and I kept it very, very quiet. I never spoke about it. Once again, I didn't know what was going on. It wasn't until about, I think it was 12, 15 years later, that I started reading books about different phenomena, and one of them had about near-death experiences. So I started reading that, and it had about, there was I think about 6 cases in this book, and they talked about it. And something that one person said was similar to what another person had said, and I started to bring in this sort of information coming through. I just found it really, really fascinating, and that's when I realised that's what I'd had. It was actually a near-death experience that I had. I didn't have it as violently as some people, and so I started to wonder why. Why is it that I'll be experiencing that? So first of all, an out-of-body experience, a year later a near-death experience, 10, 12 years later I'm starting to get an understanding of it. So I wanted to test the theory. Can the spirit leave the body on its own accord? And that's when I started to test it, and I left my body for the 3rd time. Did I receive any messages? I certainly received messages in my OBE, my out-of-body experience, because I actually asked the question. I said, how can I stop them doing it to anyone else? And I definitely got the answer. Again, I would not say it was an answer like, you've got to do this. It's not like that. It's that knowing. It's not about hearing it from somebody. It's not about gathering the information. It's about knowing. And as soon as I had that knowing, this is what I had to do, and that was pray to them. And I mean, let's face it, I'm not a religious person, so praying to somebody who's attacking you violently the way it was being attacked is not something I would naturally do. Naturally, I tried to fight back to start with. So it's not something I would naturally do. So that was the message I got from there. I asked the question, I got that message, and then I actioned it. When I came back into my body, I actioned it straight away. And yes, it created more violence. Yes, it wasn't polite, but you know what? There's no way known I was going to stop having this knowing, that knowledge, that understanding when I came back into my body. There's no way known I was going to stop, saying it, repeating it, and saying it out loud to them, because that's what I felt I needed to do. In the near-death experience, I didn't get any of that. I think that's why I didn't talk about it for such a long time, is the fact that it wasn't a big aha moment for me. I didn't have that knowledge. I didn't have that feeling of euphoria or anything like that. It was really, really basic. It wasn't until 10, 12, 15 years later, whatever it was, when I started to research it, that I got the understanding of what it was about. It didn't happen straight away for me. Maybe I'm a slow learner. So what I learnt from this experience, and I went into it the 3rd time, like I said, I tested the theory, because I'm a theory tester. So I've had an OBE, sort of started to understand what that is. We're talking about 15 years down the track. I had a near-death experience, didn't understand what that was until, a long way down the track. When I was doing this research and everything else, I got this book. I found this book it was about astral traveling. Okay, so now astral traveling is about when your spirit leaves your body. You're still always connected, but your spirit can actually leave your body. Now, in this book, it had some little examples to try. So I tested that theory. And in that theory, it took me about 6 months, I think it was. And then one night, I actually did the astral traveling, and it is different to dreaming. It is different to, real life. It is very, very different, and you know it's different, and you know there's an understanding to it. It's the difference between having a dream and having a premonition. You know that there's a difference to it. Well, astral traveling, you know there's a difference to that as well, and you do feel it. It's really, really, I got really excited because I was trying to test it. But because I got excited, as soon as you put that emotion in it, straight back into the body I went. Okay, but I know I did it. And that was really, really important because that was part of my learning. So the first part I did, I had an OBE, an out-of-body experience. My spirit left my physical body during trauma. Okay, so it was a form of, to me, that was a form of protection, protecting me from what was going on because that emotion is detached. The next time I had a near-death experience, and I feel that was just so you could get an understanding of what it was like on the other side and give me that confidence to be able to go forward, to not be afraid. The third time, when I did it deliberately with an astral traveling, that was sort of to help me get an understanding that, hey, we can do this if we choose to. Now, I've not done it since. I don't need to. But my biggest learning about it was, as I've said before, is having that real clear understanding that we have a physical side to us and a spiritual side to us. There's both of them there. And that got me thinking and went, well, if they've got a physical and a spiritual, how do they communicate? And that's when I was told, spiritually, I was told that is your intuition. That is how your spirit will connect with your physical body, and they're the messages that go through. And that's why when we start to listen to our intuition, we start to follow and trust our gut and those feelings that we have, that is why they're always on point for us, because that's our spiritual learning in our physical body. Connecting with my spirituality was more about connecting with me and who I was, because in this marriage, I have lost myself. I've completely lost myself. 20 years of an abusive marriage, I've lost myself. So part of my learning, part of my superpowers was actually getting in contact with who I was again and knowing who I was again and being able to stand up and have confidence in that is who I am. Like it or not, that's who I am. And that was my biggest moment, knowing that the spirit has a purpose to get, and we have life purposes. It's the spirit's purpose, and the physical body just puts that all in place for you. So knowing that I have this deeper purpose in life would allow me to deal with my marriage, let that marriage go, and move on with my life. And now I'm doing what I need to do, what I feel like is on purpose. So yeah, I didn't have a big aha moment. It was a long-term thing, but it was certainly life-changing. Can I put it down to one event? No, but I certainly can put it down to that knowing that we have that spiritual side and that physical side, because I've been there, done that. My thoughts about God and about heaven are still very similar to before I had the experience or the experiences. I've never been a strong religious person. I do not follow a religion. I have seen a lot of negativity in those religious areas, and so I was always anti-religion. And for a while there, I was anti-God too. Anybody that mentioned the word God, it was like, come on. But I must admit, I will often say the word God now, and I don't have that horrible feeling I have, but I do feel that there's a universal source out there, and I probably use that terminology more than the word God. And the reason why I don't use the word God is because we all have our own understandings and our own idea of what God is, and when I'm referring to God and somebody else is referring to God, it could be very, very different. So I do tend to say universal energy. I do tend to say, yeah, there's something out there. I don't know what it is. I don't understand it that much. But I know that we're all connected, and I know that spirituality is running through all of us. And if that's what you want to call God, I think they call it prana, they call it chi, whatever you want to call it, it's there. So I don't have that strong terminology for it, and I still don't feel any different after as I did before, but it's just a beautiful knowing. Do I believe in heaven and hell? Wow. a lot of people sort of say heaven and hell is here on earth. And I sort of tend to believe that a little bit, because you see both sides of it. It can be quite heavenly here, and it can be quite hellish as well. So do I believe in heaven and hell as far as spaces to go to? Probably not 100%. Do I believe that if you do wrong, you could go to a hellish place? I tend to believe that if you do right, you go into a heavenly place. But I also think it's more about a feeling, an emotion, and an energy rather than an actual physical place. So when you're I just feel it's more of an energy, because let's face it, we can live in the most beautiful place in the world, but have such a bad depression or feel so negative that it doesn't matter what it looks like, it could still feel like hell. And vice versa. When you look at people like Nelson Mandela, when he was in jail for all those years, but he was having positive thoughts, it didn't feel like hell, it felt like heaven, because of his energy that he was putting out. So yes, I don't believe there's an actual place, even though I feel like I've been there, but I don't feel it's an actual place as much as it's more of a feeling. What will happen with criminals when they die? Well, they've got to face their own hell. They've got to face their own hell. And this is where I believe in reincarnation. So that's one thing. And so with reincarnation, we have karma. I believe in the karma. So when you've got somebody who's been doing negative stuff, bad stuff here, they're still going to have to face that. They're still going to have to come back and face it, because the reason why, well, this is my belief, the reason why my spirit is here in this body and at this moment is because it has a purpose. It has something to learn, something to achieve. Now, if you think about it, with spirit or with our soul, we don't touch, taste, we don't have any of the 5 elements of the 5 physical senses as a soul, as a spirit. We don't have those 5 physical senses. So for us or a soul to experience anything, it has to come into the physical body. It has to come into this body to be able to experience different things. Now, if that soul's got a purpose, it has to try and get that spirit, that spirit has a purpose, or soul has a purpose. They've got to try and get that physical body to do what it needs to do so they can achieve what it is that they need to achieve. So if it's doing something negative, the physical side of the physical side of the human being, that human side of it, if that takes control and starts to do negative stuff, then that spirit has to come back, reincarnate again, and it has to go through it all again. Now, if it comes back, when it does come back, I should say, the environment that it is going to be in could be quite hellish. So it's all about that karma and that turning over. So we've all got the ability to be good. We've all got the ability to be bad. It's what we choose to do. And that's where karma will come in, and reincarnation. Do I see things about the future? I often will see things about the future. I actually saw 9/11, and I saw the tsunami and Boxing Day quite a few years ago. I saw them year prior to what was happening. But I have to be honest, when I see things in the future or things like that, you don't know what you're seeing. It's a bit like Nostradamus, where he was writing things down. He didn't know what he was seeing. He only could explain it the way he saw it. When I saw some of the visions that I saw, I didn't understand what I was seeing. All I could do was express what I was seeing. So, but in this sort of context and going forward, I feel that we're going through a big change process at the moment. The world is going through a big change process at the moment, and I feel that spirituality is going to be lifting. People talking about near-death experiences, people talking about their spiritual sides and experiences is all coming out stronger and stronger. And if we don't start to listen to what our soul, our spirit is saying, we are going to it's not going to be as positive as if we can listen to it and go into a more positive way about it. That's sort of how I feel the future's going. Will it be a positive or a negative future? Look, That again is how we want to look at it. Look, I've just gone through a little bit of a tough time at the moment, and I don't like to say a negative time, because tough times are times when we can learn. Tough times, if we're going along the right path, if we're on purpose and we're doing the right things, you're not going to have too many tough times. But the tough times aren't bad. The negative stuff isn't bad. It's just how we're looking at it. So it seems bad, but there's always a learning experience with it. There's always change. There's always an understanding towards it. I was violently raped. I refused to talk about that. I refused to talk about it for years until I could find a positive to hopefully help somebody else that experienced it, that went through it, that may experience it, may go through it, how you can deal with it, how you can get through it. So it's not necessarily a positive future or a negative future. It's the future that you decide that you want to do. It's the future where you go. And those things that do become challenging and do become negative, if you're in contact with your spirituality, if you're in line with your soul, you will get through that quicker and you will get an understanding of it quicker. So preparing for anything negative, I guess it's pretty hard to prepare for it. But some of the stuff that I have done and that has helped me is meditation. A lot of that side of the meditation. And meditation can be passive meditation where you sit there in silence, in quiet, stare at a candle or different things like that. Guided meditations where you can jump onto YouTube and have someone talking you through it. So there's lots of different types of meditation. And active meditation is so good. I look at walking, my morning walk, 45 minutes I do, and I go for a morning walk. That's like an active meditation. If you're talking to somebody, it's not. But if you're on your own and you're just pacing it out and you've got that rhythm happening, that's like an active meditation. Information can come through if you want it to, but one of the big things is if you want to get an understanding to anything, like I did when I was being attacked and I didn't realise, the first thing you need to do is ask. Because if you say if you go to bed and you sort of go, oh my goodness, well, I'm having such a hard time of this, can you give me an answer? Can you give me an understanding? Should I do this? Should I do that? Can you give me some sort of explanation? So you ask, because as soon as you ask, you become open to receive. If you don't ask, you're not open to receiving. So you can be getting all these synchronicities, all this information, all these messages, and you're not listening because you haven't asked. So if you're having a tough time, you say, okay, how do I get through this? What do I do? Where do I go? And I often do mine at night. I often say it at night. And sometimes I'll have a dream, I'll have an understanding of it. Sometimes I'll get up in the morning and I'll be doing my walk, or I'm in the shower. I often get it in the shower. I often get information near water. I'll get this information come through, and it gives me an understanding of how I can step through it. This is what my intuition is saying to start with. This is what my spirit's saying. This is what my soul's saying. And I can follow those areas. And so you ask, because that's if you're open to receiving. You will receive the information, and then you need to action it. So putting the understanding into action is what you need to do next. So when you're going through these tough times, don't be afraid to ask. Ask angels, ask spirit, ask whoever. I mean, often people, if you are religious, you'll go to a church, you'll ask the people there, you'll ask friends. Don't be afraid to ask. They may not give you all the answers, they might not have the answers. But when you're asking, you're open to receiving some information. But be mindful of those messages. You're going to get messages. You may hear a song on the radio. You may hear see something. One of the examples I'd like to say is I was driving down one of our major highways here in Australia. We're driving down there. I was with my partner, and we'd been talking about something. And as we're driving along, we drove past a billboard, and he said to me, "Did you see that billboard? That had exactly what we were talking about." I went, no, I didn't see it. Driving along a little bit further, and then the radio, they said something on the radio, and I said, "Oh my goodness, did you hear that? It was on the radio, exactly what we were talking about." And he goes, "No, I didn't hear it." Now, I didn't see what he saw, because he's very visual. I heard something. And so we both got a message, but we got it the way we get it. And on my website, I've got this little free quiz to get an understanding of how you receive your messages. Do you see them more often? Will you hear them more often? The different ways that we receive messages. So that's how our intuition is connecting with us, how our spirit is trying to guide us. If you would like to connect with me, I have the website, which is called intuitivenature.com.au. Now it's an AU because it's an Australian business. So intuitivenature.com.au. You can connect on there. I've got online courses on there. You can connect if you want a one-on-one. I have I do flower readings too. They're really quite fun. But yes, I do a lot of counselling and coaching in that sort of context. But yeah, intuitivenature.com.au, you can connect with me, and I'm on all the socials.